Welcome, subscribers. Thank you for subscribing, new subscribers, and thank all of you for your support. My name is Penelope Horton. You can call me Miss Penny. I run the chemistry store and organization. If you're looking for a reading, please click the link in my bio. I have several services and products that you might be interested in. So it's been a while since we've talked, especially about the book, The Great Cosmic Mother. I just left it there. I've been very, very busy in my spiritual studies, and I haven't had a chance to get back here to you. But hey, here I am now. We're going to talk about it. There's so much going on right now. There's a lot going on right now. And just like I said, these 2 years, is going to be very turbulent for us. Going to see a lot of big changes, especially with women. But let me jump in here. I'm not going to get on my soapbox. That's a video for another day, and maybe I will talk about it as I go through here. Now, today I'm going to cover the lunar calendars. I'm going to skip over this a little bit. I thought this was important because I think this is important because this shows how they changed astrology and based everything around the sun and not on the moon. And so we know definitely some changes occurred, but let me jump in here. The first engraved rocks and stone yet found date from 30,000 BC. This was the very beginning of Homo sapiens during the early Neanderthal period in the second interglacial Europe. These permanently marked stones are believed to be time markers, moon times markers, and were without doubt engraved by females. Didn't I tell you that? If they had anything, if women were the first to do this, it would have been based on the moon and not the sun, because they depended also on agriculture to know when that water tide was going to rise, when it was going to fall. These women, they were very smart. So early as Thompson notes, the human is miniaturizing her universe into symbolic form. Thousands of similar pieces of stone and bone have been found dating from the later Old Stone Age, circa 30,000 BC. These are marked with long, often complex sequences of notches and scratches and elaboration of earliest Neanderthal engraved stones. Many prehistorians have dismissed these marks as decoration. Does this sound familiar by now? Again, they're constantly dismissing the matriarch culture that was already there, but yet they're building everything they have created is built off of it. But Alexander Marshak, an American archaeological writer, decided to study these marks systematically under a microscope. He found the signs to be deliberately made. The tiny grooves cut in differing depths, width, and shapes. Scratches on the pebble or bone were made with differently shaped tools. Marshak concluded that the marker changed to a new tool, often cutting a new angle. With each change of moon phase, one piece of bone records 6 months on one side and 6 months on the other. This system had to been undergoing refinement since the Neanderthal engraved rocks of 300,000 BC. It was complicated notation for recording factual data, timekeeping, phase, and cycle marking, and it was in use in Europeans, indeed hundreds of thousands of years before what is called true writing appeared in the Near East sometime in the late 4th millennium BC. This notation and the lunar calendar it recorded was the invention of women. Marshak had studied another form of timekeeping, the lunar calendar stick. Yes, they had that, the lunar calendar stick. Originally perhaps carved from bone, later of wood, the sticks were an elaborate record of the lunar year. That makes sense because you have Shishak carrying the staff. That staff that they carried in the ancient time, in the matriarch culture, you see them holding that staff. So measuring, again, this makes sense. I'm just astounded. Like I said, this is yummy. One such calendar stick that Meshach spotted in 1828 portrait of the Winnebago chief was the 53 inches long with 4 sides or faces. Vertical marks are etched into the regular intervals. Above them are small crescents and dots. These sticks were complex lunar tally sticks that marked the lunar year, brought the lunar year into phase with the solar year, and noted the times of ritual. So far, Meshach has found at least 5 calendar sticks from different Native American tribes. You see how this goes on. You see that common thread? That was the common thread. We are together, connected through the divine feminine. We are connected through the first mother. Such sticks appear in Paleolithic caves, painting dating back from 50,000 BC. They are held by women and shamans, and later became the magician wand. Abby Bruel named this stick the Labaton de Commandment, suggesting it was the insignia of male rulership or power. But in fact, as a lunar measuring instrument, the stick derives from women's earliest moon phase and engraving on rock and bone. In Thompson's word, the owner of the baton is not man, the mighty hunter, but the midwife. Yes, you're hearing it here. You are hearing it here, beloved. Yes, you are. You heard it right. The midwife, of course, because it was her job. I mean, I tell you about those midwives that came in there, and then they came in after that. They came in and they replaced the doctors because the midwives had all that doctorate knowledge. Then they come in making their own medicine or whatever they were doing. But the women had these jobs first. They were high in society. They had those roles spiritually, medicinally. They had those roles because they are the originators of this planet. Okay? They originally, women, that species is from here, connected to this planet. Of course, because it was her job and the job of every pregnant woman to know exactly when babies were due. Anthropologists have described the keeping of lunar calendars specifically by women among Australian Aborigines, 6 Siberian tribes, and Yurok Indians of North America. Australian women use notch sticks. Among the past and the present day, Siberians, Nagasians, Incest, Dolgans, Chukchis, Koryats, and Cats. Pregnancy has the duration of exactly 10 lunar months, and it has always been women who kept the lunar calendars, marking those months off towards a safe full-term birth. Yurok women kept menstrual calendars and were certainly typical in this of other Native American women of both hemispheres. The Yurok count was kept by dropping a month stick each lunar month into a second basket until they reached a count of 10. With this method, they could predict births to within a day, crucial accuracy among early hunting and gathering people on the move. The count was also useful in connection with abortion. Okay, you're hearing it here. As Thompson says, it is perfectly reasonable to assume the menstruation, lunar calendar, and midwifery are as much or more at the foundation of human science than man, the greater killer, so celebrated by the macho anthropologists. I just said that. Okay, the great mother really be working on me when I be, getting this information. It just be coming through. And then I read this and I'm like, oh my gosh, the great mother was right. The ancestors was right. And in fact, this does make sense, the kind of clear, simple sense that is so easily overlooked. The biblical idea that humanity began with the crime of disobedience is wrong. We know that by now. The capitalist Darwinian notion that human intellect begins with a clever act of self-interested murder and plunder and self-aggrandizement is wrong. Because that's in their nature, to be violent like that. You hear some of the stories that they say, even with their idea of love, is pain. It's just pain. The macho anthropological belief that human life and the human brain evolved through the inventions, discoveries, and experiences of the male hunter alone is wrong. Human life begins with birth, and human culture and intelligence begin with birth, with females' experiences of surviving pregnancy and bearing children and keeping them alive. So you're hearing it here, beloved. And I'm going through this book. I was just like, oh my God, just the lies, the brainwashing we have to undo is something. The possession by the Winnebago Indian chief of the lunar calendar stick as part of the insignia of power, along with the axe and the neck pendant, show that this ruling power derives from the ancient time of female power. Thompson again points out that priests and shamans must always dress as women to take on an original magic, and that Aboriginal men worldwide were put through imitation, childbirth, and menstruation rituals for those initiations. Didn't I tell you that the spiritual authority belonged to women? And that they would have to go through a lengthy process to take on those roles. Be careful out there with these men out here that's learning this stuff, that they don't have, a divine feminine over them, that they shouldn't be leading at all. The fact that the baton was taken over by men in the militarist cultures of patriarchal civilization may in fact indicate they took it over because it was most ancient symbol of feminine power. And see how they turned it into a phallic. They did it into a lot of things. They turned a lot of things into a phallic. Okay. Do I want to go on here? I think I'm going to stop here and go on to the next chapter here, into the moon mines. Okay, we're going to jump into this moon mines. That's the section of this book. I thought this part was interesting, so I'm going to go over this part in it. But it's lots more that you need to really read for yourself. I'm just giving commentary and highlighting the parts that really jumped out to me in this book that was shared to me through spirit. That's what really trips me out, because I was like, oh, these are all the things were on the inside of me, and now I see somebody is writing what was on my thoughts, my feelings on women's spirituality and my search and finding myself. So let me read. Among early women, no one experienced menstruation in private. It was not personal phenomenon, but an awesome datum of the female group. Group initiation rites were held when the young girls reached puberty. This is still true among all Aboriginal people worldwide, whose customs have not been totally suppressed by Christian patriarchy. Originally, female puberty rites of the first menstruation were not meant to punish girls with shame for the crime of becoming women or to restrict their new lives as women in any punitive way. The rites were celebration of female power and initiation of the young girl into the wise, careful use of the power for the benefit of all. The first menstruation was a transition into a partaking of nature of the cosmic mother and of her full face, the moon, women's monthly cycle, being seen as the same duration of the moon cycle, and women's bleeding synchronous actually or legendarily with the dark moon. It was easy to believe that the moon mother was bleeding also. The witches' Sabbaths were originally observance of the sacred or taboo days at the new and full moon, critical days of her cycle, days, nights of great power for good or for harm. Women originally went into menstrual huts in order to gather the dark moon power, to focus it and study it in solitude. In both groups, solitary meditation, moon power, became mind power. In most languages, there is a common root word for moon and menstruation. Our own word for menstruation comes from menses, the Latin word for month, which was measured originally by the moon. You're hearing it here. That would have made so much sense, and we have records of that. The sun didn't come in until later on. We don't see the sun come into play until later on. And both words are related through Indo-European roots to the Old English word mona, which is deriving from me, which meant both mind and measurement. All are cognates, moon, mind, measurement, month, menstruation, since it is the moon mind that establishes measurements, including calendars. This cluster of meaning can also be found in Egyptian moon god, who was worshipped as the creator of the alphabet, the art, writing, literature, numbers, counting, wisdom. Though the Egyptian moon god was male, again, we have to go back to Shishat. I think they forgot that here. Shishat, she was there, okay? Why is this being skipped? He was seen as the lover of the goddess and thus assigned her attributes. Okay, so she do admit that. Does she go into detail? Menstruation also means moon change, also mind change. The mother was seen to rest at full moon when she was neither waxing nor waning. Sabbat means heart rest. The witches' Sabbats were first held once a month, but later at each quarter of the moon. All witches' celebration, all pagans' rituals were acts of cognizing a revolving process change within the continuity within change around and around forever. Pregnancy as a menstruation was believed to be caused by the moon. Menstruation came from the new moon or the dark moon, while the full moon impregnated a folk belief that correlates very well with the fact that equatorial ovulation during the full moon. Many mythological and folk heroes and religious founders are supposedly conceived by the moon, including the Buddha and Jesus. And when we think about it, whose mother still stands on her moon? Physically, the moon exerts a gravitational pull, which combine that of the sun, deforms the earth's surfaces by as much as a foot. The surface of the ocean is pulled into a bulge measuring several feet, causing the tides. Recent studies have shown, however, that it is light of the moon, perhaps even more than its gravitational pull, that influence the reproductive behavior of organisms. You're hearing it here. See, we've been taught we haven't been taught. Lost. Like most animals and plants, humans evolved in light and dark world, day and night, alternated regularly. But periodically, the night is not dark around the time of the full moon. Perhaps the human species evolved a genetic response to moonlight. If all early women ovulated at the full moon, light is a potent trigger, a biological rhythm, and it is not an impossibility that artificial light has affected our body rhythms. There is never real darkness in a city, destroying our ancient understanding of menstrual month-moon periodicity, perhaps destroying also our knowledge of natural ancient understanding of the menstrual month-moon, of natural contraceptives as suggested provocative by Louise Lace in her book, Lunarception. So they have did a lot of study into this. To keep women suppressed like this for that long, again, go back and look at Darwin and Freud's work. Go look at some of the way they were treating women back in those days. You will see that there was some suppression and oppression of women and children, especially. And we're looking at it right now. A lot of revealing is going to go on in this past 2 years as these Pluto comes into play. So you're going to see a lot of changes go on here. But let me get back to this. I don't want to jump off. The power of fertility in plants as well as in humans was seen to emanate from the moon. Many people still hold the ancient belief that plants grow mostly at night under a polarized moonlight. Agriculture began in a very warm Near Eastern climates where the sun can be a force hostile to life, scorching young shoots, burning leaves, and the soil into a red dust. Plutarch, in his Isis and Osiris, argued that the moon, with her humid generative light, is favorable to the propagation of animals and the growth of plants, while the sun, with its fierce fire scorches and burns up all growing things, renders the greater part of the earth uninhabitable by reasons of his blaze, often overpowers the moon herself. In such lands, summer with its unrelenting heat was conceived as a return to chaos, the end of the world through heat and fire. Early people saw the sun as a lesser fruit of the mother sky. It was a female night with her cool moisture and magical moonlight that gave life and fertility. Among people for whom sex does not imply impurity. Moving on through this document. So I'm jumping down here at the end of this program, the end of this paragraph, and moving in here. I thought this was very interesting. So it says, among people from whom sex does not imply impurity, a whole magical religious danger, the taboo on the sexual act does not occur in relation to ceremonies. Rather, ceremonial sex was always a powerful act leading to spiritual perfection. Within the stone circles of Neolithic, perhaps the entire human community celebrated the creative power of the goddess in festivals coinciding with the magic times when the energy tides of the unseen flowed strongly around and through Earth. Earth channels were then wide open to receive her spirit, giving enhanced consciousness, healing, fertility to the people. These are the ceremonies that have been condescendingly labeled fertility rites, but by Puritan patriarchal anthropologists and satanic orgies by the missionaries. So something that was deemed holy got distorted by patriarchs, and this is one reason why they call it. They look at sex as such a negative light, and how it has gotten perverse the way it is now. When sex got into the hands of men spiritually, physically, he warped it. And of course you're going to do that because you're not familiar with the energy. You're not in tune with these energies. You have to go through a certain rites of passage to do that. They should not have their hands on it. And a lot of them are not mature enough to deal with it. That's why we have women and children, again, I'm going to say this again, being oppressed and suppressed today. That's why we got, economy is, all that stuff is all out of whack, because the person that's in charge, these people that's in charge should not be in charge, because that's not the way it's supposed to be set up. The vast silence of dark space lit by the clarity of the moon and stars became a metaphor for deep thought, creative vision. The moon goddess was the judge and the giver of law. Crimes, challenges, problems were investigated by the women of the moonlight. You hearing it here? Bright nights were spent sitting around the fire thinking, contemplating, envisioning. This is why words that have to do with mental activity are in most languages cognate with the names for the moon. Wow. Men's, mental, measure, month, mind. They call the moon the mother of the universe, having both female and male powers, reproducing herself alone. Sowing and reaping were reckoned by the moon. Sowing at the new moon, reaping at the old. All agricultural proceedings had to be timed with moon's changes. I said that. My grandmother had an almanac, and they looked at everything through that almanac. It's good to have. I've been having to use that in a lot of my conjure work. I've been having to use that almanac in a lot of my conjure work. So, they're imperative to have. And then, I ain't going to get into that because I'll go into another thing. I'm not getting into that. Planting, cultivating, harvesting were originally women's work, since only women are under the direct guardianship of the moon mother. See? Many agricultural people still believe that only women can make things grow. Water, like fire, was anciently sacred and specially related to the moon. Rain mother. Rainmaking and magic control of the weather were secret rites performed by naked women, not to be seen by men. And my grandmother said she knew how to split a storm, that her mama taught her how to split a storm. Witches have the same custom still. It was traditionally said of them that tender girls of 8 to 10 years can raise up rain and tempest. In recent studies, psychic phenomenon made in Russia, it was found that dowsing rods work twice as accurately in the hands of women than in those of men. More dramatically, the dowsing rod always respond to the polarity of women's bodies, no matter from what direction the body is approached. This is not the case with men's bodies. Since the tides are regulated by the moon mothers, she was believed to give all moisture for the morning dew, natural springs, and rain to the great rivers and ocean. The moon queen was the tribe rainmaker. The moon also controls the fluids of human body. The brain, as the moistest part of all, was particularly subject to its influence. Words like lunacy and moon madness show negative traces of this belief. Okay, we're going into Moon Mother. Some things I highlighted in here I thought that was very interesting and important. The earliest human representation of the Moon Mother, and perhaps the most universal, were in the form of a cone or pillar of stone. This is the column on which the death and life goddess perches, the anointed one. The stones themselves were considered sacred. Sometimes they were meteoric, and they were anointed by having ritual oil, blood, fermented liquor poured over them. The great Semitic moon goddess Astarte was worshipped on Mount Sinai by the Canaanites in the form of a stone pillar. Long before Moses received the stone tablets of the law there, Mount Sinai, in fact, means mountain of the moon. You heard it. See how they just hide stuff from us? But yet these patriarchs supposed to be, this is their God. They made, And it is interesting to note that Hebrew Levite priestesses were originally serpent priests. I told you they rebelled against the Great Mother. They learned all this occult and esoteric knowledge from the Great Mother. The great serpent, as in Leviathan. There is a close resemblance among moon mothers everywhere. In this form, the great goddess is always the lawgiver, the order of time, the judge of the dead, and the eternal source of wisdom and ecstasy. She was Ishtar of Babylon long before 3000 BC. As the Hindu moon mother Kali sits in her lotus posture, breathing the rise and fall of earthly ties, the Irish goddess, pronounced Kali, sits in her lotus position also and does the same. Even Mary of the Catholic Church is called the moon and turned to by women in childbirth, and was her original Diana Artemis Arstig in her form of great whale dragon, Babylonian Tiamat, Hebrew Leviathan. Ishtar brought about the great flood, an earthly disaster story the Hebrew borrowed from the Sumerians and the Babylonians' account. So you see how we talked about that in the Sibyls, how these men were going out taking these writings from the matriarch culture. Again, they divided all this stuff up and they come up with these religions, because these were not religions at first. They were goddess temples all over the globe. They were all connected in a way and form. It was imperial. It was imperial. Women were imperial. Okay? They were superior to men for a very long time. The threefold goddess of Arabia, Magna Dea, was enshrined in the sacred black stone, the Kaaba at Mecca, where she was served in ancient times by her priestesses. The sacred black stone in Mecca, site of so many pilgrimages, is imprinted with her vulva, yoni sign, and covered with a black pall called the skirt of Kaaba. The male priests who serve her today are called Beni Sheba, which means the sons of the old woman, the moon. Present-day Muslims pilgrims to this shrine, the most holy place of Islam, are most unaware of the pre-Islamic significance of Kaaba. They circle the black stone 7 times to attain summit by spiraling around it. 7 is the number of the moon, and the ancients always danced the way in spiral processions to the summits of her earth mounds. Moon shrines and sanctuaries were situated in forests and caves and on mountaintops by lakes, sacred springs, and wells. There were also healing centers. Priestess guarded the water supplies as well as the sacred fires. This was true even in Roman time, where the priestesses were called Vestal Virgins. That's what you'll see that Virgo, the virgin, you'll see the Virgo represent that as well. You'll see these virgins pouring out this water. Water springs originated deep in the earth, were believed to have magic healing powers. And fire was fertilizing power of the moon. The sacred flame representing the moonlight, torches, candies, bonfires were burnt to help keep the moon fertilizing, light shining. The bonfires, torch processions, and candle burning at Christmas time originated in these fire rituals of the goddess. On December 13th in Sweden, Saint Lucia travels in procession as the Queen of Light, with the crown of candles in her hair, surrounded by her maidens. Even now, and of course, the evergreen tree, the gift exchange, and the midwinter festival of Christmas all derive from the ancient pagan midwinter rituals of the goddess. And then they start telling you that's evil. And I keep telling people the paganism, when they talk about pagans, when you see them mentioning pagans and some of this history stuff, that's such a light word to say to cover up women and children, that you were unaliving and abusing, oppressing, suppressing. That's just so that, you know, it's just a cover up to make it sound like what they're doing is very light. And they did, you know, again, watch the wording. You'll pick up on it. And then when you start finding out who the pagans was, you're like, oh my gosh, these were our mothers. These were our grandmothers. These were our children. When it actually just really hits you what pagan really means. What, you know, they labeling stuff. 13 members in witch covens is the number 13 seen as unlucky because of his association with matriarchal religion. Did you know that? Among pagan Scandinavians, Friday the 13th was celebrated as a beneficent day. Friday is Freya, Frigga's day, the great goddess of the north, and 13 is the number of the lunar months in a year. Many patriarchal bad omens are simply reversals of what was sacred to matriarchal goddess religions. Are you hearing it? They flipped all that on you and made it evil. The left-hand path in patriarchal religion is called the path of evil of a woman, of black magic. The left side of the body where the heart beats, as considered by the ancients to be the seat of divine feminine power, all life comes from her heart. The word sinister, which originally meant left, has come to mean everything suspicious, evil, ominous, while dextra, meaning Latin right, has acquired wonderful meanings like skillfully, mentally, clever, correct. In Europe, illegitimate child was long signified bar sinister, meaning child of left side, the mother side. The right-hand path is supposed to be the path of goodness, of what the white magic and children are encouraged to favor. The right hand, the hand of righteousness. That's what they call it. In Christian imagery, the good sheep sit on God's right hand in heaven and the bad goat to the left. That these connotations remain with us in modern politics is not accidental. The father is fascistic. The left is mother communal. Ancient moon priestesses were called virgins. Virgin meant not married, not belonging to a man, a woman who was one herself. Excuse me. The very word derives from a Latin root meaning strength, force, skill, and was later applied to men. Virile, Ishtar, Diana, Esther, Isis were all called virgin, which did not refer to sexual chastity, but a sexual independence, and all great culture heroes of the past, mythic or historic, were said to be born of a virgin mother. Marduk, Gilgamesh, Buddha, Osiris, Dionysus, Genghis Khan, Jesus, they were all affirmed as sons of the Great Mother. I talked about that in my book, Christ Consciousness. I talk about this subject, the Great Mother of Original One, their worldly power deriving from her. When the Hebrews used the word, and in the original Aramaic meant maiden, young woman with no connotations of sex or of sexual chastity, but later Christians translator could not conceive of a Virgin Mary as a woman of independent sexuality. Here we get again this biasness, this misogyny. Needless to say, they distorted the meaning into sexually pure, chaste, never touched. See how things get messed up? When Joan of Arc with her witch coven association were called Lupucelle, the maiden, the virgin, the word retains some of its original pagan sense of a strong, independent woman. The moon goddess was worshipped in orgiastic rites, being the divinity of matriarchal women, free to take as many lovers as they chose. Women could surrender themselves to the goddess by making love to a stranger in her temple. This was called by male historians sacred prostitution. See, male historians call this, and I saw Bobby Hemmett talking about that too, and he was talking about it in the wrong content. This is why we don't need to be listening to men tell the story of our divine mother. You are not a woman, so you can never understand our experience. You can't give life, so they should not be telling the story of the Great Mother. We should be telling this story. Okay, but the word is totally misleading. This was not a kind of service to men, nor did any woman have to do this to live. You understand? It was a way for women to participate for a ritual moment in the trans-individual being of the goddess. The goddess comes into being in the moment of union, a moment of psychic as well as sexual union. This was one way that men could partake in her essence also through the body of woman. The rite was meant to recharge the living goddess, as to enlarge the woman's ego consciousness into an experience of cosmic sexual power and flow. It was a way for each woman to experience herself as the moon. That's what that was for. Now I'm going to move into the magic tree, which is going to be a short little run through here. This section is called the magic moon tree. The magic tree grew in northwest India, from which a wine with a narcotic effect was made. The yellow soma plant was plucked by moonlight and bathed in water and milk, becoming thereby identified with the yellow swelling and water cleansed moon. 1/8 soma with the ritual words swell and increase, becoming oneself the self of nourishment, free from all warring opposites. Inspiration and ecstasy led to final initiation through the moon into a higher consciousness. And this was to become like the goddess, to transcend death and be immortal, with the power to envision and create what had not been manifest before. Those who verily depart from this world to the moon, in truth they go. This verily is the door of the heavenly world. So yeah, this was this summer. We took these herbs and things to explore our minds, like you see the shrooms, like you see the ayahuasca. All these were type of God things we did to go into a higher consciousness. to gain wisdom, to gain insight, to see, to communicate with spirit. In the Hebrew Christian Garden of Eden, the human race is punished for desiring transcendent knowledge. Now, what was that fruit? Because they became aware. They became aware. They became aware of themselves. Truly, it was some psychedelic within it that opened up their mind. Have you ever thought about it from that perspective? I surely have. Where do you think we get altered states from? Altered states of consciousness. Human race is punished for desiring transcendent knowledge, sexual awareness, and immortality, for wanting to be like gods. In the much more ancient, original, beautiful garden of the goddess, human beings are asked to participate in her immortality, to know and enjoy the ecstasy of divine oneness. That's what all the symbols are for. That's why she gave us the natural hallucinogens for wise use. You hearing it here? But men, they didn't want that in Christianity. They didn't want that in there. They wanted to control the spirit. They want to control everything up in there. The cup of Soma is also the mind, the men's mind moon, the Miss Mind's moon. It is the mental perception and knowledge conveying the psychic cosmic inspiration of the moon. When the understanding of its own motion forms ideas within itself, it then comes to be called mind. Through the loss of ego, personal self-conscious control, one reaches the still center that is true self, spiraling the body sight through sexual rite, ecstatic dance, and the drinking of Soma. One reaches the still center of all. Soma is distilled from the primordial waters and the dark fruit of the moon tree. Soma is the mind fruit of the spine. Spine tree coming from the dark moon, the Sibyl, Hecate, Kundalini, Kali. Can't say the other word. Kosuku. Soma gives visions, but also madness, lunacy. It came to be called by the culture solacy. Moon is the magical powers, the mind, manas, inspiration, ecstatic trance. Being a moon force, it is a double edge like the double X leprosy. It can spin in either direction like the moon wheel. Its spiraling gives knowledge, energy for both creation and destruction. The moon tree is the place of generation, the place of the dead, the place of regeneration. The spine. Spirit is the fruit, daughter, son of the maternal tree Kundalini. The vital serpent, the world mother, is the electromagnetic force. The fiery breath of the dragon is an actual power which, when aroused into action, can easily destroy as it can create. What is true of natural power, lightning, water, wind, fire, is also true of spiritual power. Great energy is also great danger. Within the goddess, everything is real. Spirit and matter are equally potent forces, and their intertwining action is constantly magic, constantly real. By separating spirit and matter, patriarchal ideology has reduced physical existence to a mere observable mechanism, so-called practical reality, while spiritual existence discarded or abstracted into imagination or the ideal, or as an Apollonian solar cults. You heard her say that. The Apollonian, let me say that again, Apollonian solar cults. Because that's what they came up with. They matched, they copied everything. Men don't come up with original ideas. Men do not, let me repeat that again. Men do not come up with original ideas. This patriarchy did not come up with original ideas. Let me phrase it that way. All these ideas, all these concepts came from women. I need you to wrap your head around it. Women, I need you to wrap your head around that. And in theological tendencies of Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, spirit becomes sheer being or pure existence in eternity, an absolute good, or some other intellectual abstraction wholly unrooted in cosmic process, wholly extracted from life, like some sublime truth. Okay, you guys, we're going to be going over the moon womb. And, you know, this doesn't even scratch the surface of this book. This is just some things that I highlighted. I wanted to make comments on that I thought it was important to come here and share with you. It's just amazing. I just wrapping my mind around of centuries of walking around in the dark without this information. It's so scary. It's scary for me that many of us walk around not knowing who we are. We don't even have this information. And me, at the age that I am, it's really scary that I look at this, even though the great mother was telling me this in my spirit, and to find something to confirm it, it's kind of scary. This information needs to get out there. It really do. Women, we need to talk about our story more with our young children. This is part of our shadow work too, cleaning this up. Oh goodness, we need to clean it up. Let me jump in here. Moon and womb. The ancient people believed with their usual biological accuracy that the moon mother created human society. If the moon were to vanish, all mental activity on earth would cease. In their languages, words for wisdom, knowledge, spirit, soul, and time are always cognate with the words for the moon. In Dakotaian, Wakan means spiritual, wonderful, and minstrel. Names for the goddess usually have their roots in the words womb and vulva. The original magic was always the woman's and associated with a change of power or energy at the time of menstrual period. The most ancient moon cults were menstrual cults. Menstrual cults is liquid flesh, both sacred and biological. Magically powerful, within it dwells the life spirit. So the ancients painted their dead and their womb-like underground burial chambers with red or shray, the color of rebirth within the mother. The human womb is strongly supplied with conscious sensory nerves. It is a sense organ, complex, thin-walled, and raw like a wound. Women who were in especially strong resonance with the moon mind became shamans, oraculars, priestess, witches. They were chosen by their group or were self-chosen for their special psychic powers and divination of their blood at their first menstruation. Shamanism, an ecstatic lunar technology, relies on the natural psychic descent into the consciousness that menstruation brings each month to women. Shamanistic states of possession are still practiced among the North Pole Inuits, shaman possession, and all ecstatic the North Pole Inuits, Native Americans, Siberians, the Sames, Lapland, and pagan people everywhere to revive the techniques. Shamanic possession and all ecstatic trances are hysteric states. That's what they call it. Now I'm going to move on here to menstrual rights and taboos. Very interesting stuff. The first measure of time was menstrual time. From this, women developed lunar calendars Ancient astrology, you hearing it here. Ancient astrology, that would have been based on the moon. That would have been based on the moon. Colleges of women, moon colleges of Hera, womb giver of laws, were able to influence conception and birth through dream control. Communion with the body through dreams gave them self-knowledge through the cycle. It is possible to have a dream knowledge of conception, of pregnancy, before physical signs appear. In the experience of one of the authors, within the 2 to 3 days after intercourse, the body tells one in a dream that conception has occurred, along with the correct future sex of the fetus. It happened three out of 3 times. All this is chemical information which our brains, as electrochemical information centers, have access to. Translating chemical information into consciousness via dreams is a matter of receptivity and technique, a technique ancient women surely practice because it works. I know in my family, it never failed. When somebody in our family dreamed of fish, that meant someone was pregnant. That was an old thing in our family. My mama, it was sure. When my mama dreamed of fish, or somebody in our family dreamed of fish, somebody was surely pregnant. It was that way. So I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I don't know if this is an old Southern thing, but then too, a part of this is part of our heritage as well, especially I would say so-called hoodoo. I don't like saying that term, but for lack of a better term, you will hear that a lot upon the Black African-American culture in hoodoo. Under patriarch administration is a punishment rather than a gift. Oh, let me go. I'm skipped ahead. I'm sorry. The first measure of time was, I just said that. Under patriarch administration is a punishment rather than a gift. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, other father god religions trace the evil of women to menstruation. Menstruation is the visible bloody sign of the serpent, of the devil, in the female body. Patriarchal ontology states that all evil flows from the original female evil moon blood. Menstruation was seen as a biblical men as the curse of God laid upon woman for her sin in Eden, and the curse it is called even today. The European Inquisition probed into the women's bloody cycle, dream life, and trance experiences, declaring that any woman possessed by a pythonic ocular menstrual spirit must burn. This idea also originates in the Bible. The Old Testament patriarchs quite intentionally set themselves against the lunar psyche in women and in men who are half female, and their desire to destroy the goddess religion and the goddess within us all. Because of this, the menstruating womb became the devil of patriarchy. The only good woman is a pregnant woman, and the 300 plus years of European Christian witch hunting has been accurately called 9 million menstrual murders. Now, I have told you this over and over again. I'm going to keep saying this so you can wrap your head around it. This story about us going into slavery, it doesn't even scratch the surface of when patriarchy was put in place and all these women were tortured. And some of our children, a lot of our children, there was a lot of pedophilia going on there. This is nothing new. All this stuff that's going on is nothing new. It's just all coming to light of how it's been hidden with this artificial reality that they give us. But that is exactly what happened. And so when I'm telling you, you don't know what your great mothers went through, you can't even imagine what they had to go through to be here. You can't even imagine the trauma that you hold, Where does that anxiety come from? Where does that depression come from? Where does that PTSD come from? We not only just have it from, transatlantic slavery, so-called, we also carry it from our mother. Who are you more afraid of? Are you more afraid of a man or a woman? These are questions to ask yourself, but yet we have been programmed to love our predators, even though we know they're dangerous. They're the cause of many issues that we are facing today. Women were burned for practicing our natural moon crafts of midwifery, hypnosis, healing, dowsing, herbal and drug use, dream study, sexual pleasure, crafts that go back to the Stone Age and were passed down from mother to daughter for over 50,000 years. Since this persecution, European women at least have suffered an extreme non-alignment with their internal lunar process. European and American women, however hard we try, rarely get back in touch with our lunar chemical information because we live in isolation from each other and the moon in an environment hostile to the moon as anything but a rocket launch base or a gigantic neon billboard in the sky. Men in patriarchal societies learn or reveal a great jealousy and fear of natural women, of sexual, mental, and spiritual abilities of fully evolved women living in harmony with consciousness of our own bodies. The menstrual taboo is the consequence of this fear and resentment as they are projected back on women's lives. Under patriarchy, all life is dualized. Women also are dichotomized, cut into. There is the good little overlating wife who is supposed to be passive, not very sexual. It's hard for even a woman to feel sexy cleaning the toilet bowl. And then there is the witch, the sex friend, the sex fiend, the whore, the scarlet woman of active dynamic menstrual sexuality. There you have it there. Until yesterday, women were policed by professionals, also gynecologists, psychiatrists, who acted as culture reinforcers of the rules of femininity, who blamed our ills like menstrual depression, pain, on our failure to be feminine. How many men have grown rich being in the business of telling women what we are supposed to be. And some of us listen to them. You see that stuff with Nature Boy? Oh my God. We have got to stop. And the stuff with what is his name? Sage the Gemini. I mean, we have got to stop. Why would you think a man would be spiritually superior to a woman? Why would you think that? We have to stop thinking this man wasn't even genetically, biologically made that way. So why are you following him and listen? Yeah, they can sing a good song. They have learned to be very charming to us. They have learned our psychology. They know what they're doing is a game. We just don't know that what they're doing is a game. They have studied us, ladies. Obviously, patriarchy wants us to be something that is not natural for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't become crazy and sick trying to achieve it. Some of us have just about lost our minds for these men. I'm not saying all of us like that, but some of us, it's a lot of, the way the programming is, you're going to be touched by this mess. They got it in their religion, this misogyny, all this stuff. I sit down and think about this at my age, and I look at what I see here in the generations. And it just trickled on down. It just trickled on down. Until yesterday, once a month, witches were given drugs, electroshock treatment by the modern Inquisition. Members of the psychotherapeutic professions. Now, thanks to feminism and more women doctors, menstrual depression and pain, including premenstrual syndrome, are being seriously studied and treated with intelligence and concern, not the traditional contempt. But we can't forget how many women just yesterday were thrown into psychiatric wards by husbands, physicians, because of our cultural menstrual taboos rendered everyone stupid about basic life functions. So I'm going to stop there. Like I said, this is a wonderful read. I have this is a lot of information to process. It is a lot of information to process. But I recommend that you go and read the book because it just jumps out at you. It does. This information just jumps out at you. And it's a very good read. I think every woman should have the Sibyls. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to go over that. I don't know, I might go over that, but you need to have the Sibyls by Vivian Hunter, Mama Zogby, and you need to have this book right here. I'm telling you, need to have them in your library and sit down. You have children, you have daughters especially. We need to be sitting down talking about our story, because if they tell it from the outside, it don't give you a chance, because they start putting you in these boxes. They put us in boxes. So the deprogramming has to start at home, ladies. It has to start at home. It has to start at home. So as I continue to dive in deep, I hope you guys you enjoyed this information. It was insightful for you, and you gained some clarity behind it. It sure got my wheels turning. And especially when I got in my hoodoo course, and then we having to read this Secret Teachers of All Ages, I had to take a step back from that, because I'm like, should we be updating the information now that we have proper information about things? So, but that's me. That's my autistic mind trying to, when I get new information, to include it as well. So that is, but I'm going to address that probably on my platform as I discuss more about, share openly about some things about your practices and other stuff. But thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. Light, love, namaste, ashe, love one.